Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Christina, and I'm with Atlantic Institute. We are an organization that's a nonprofit in South Carolina, and we are doing a monthly life skills for teens class. This one is on how to prepare for college, how to study, how to write an essay, all different things like this. And so I'd like to welcome you all here, and we have with us Dr. Shirley Huseman. She's from Columbia College in Columbia, South Carolina, and she has brought all her knowledge to the table for us this morning. So while she is talking and sharing her slides, I'd like to make sure everybody knows to mute themselves. And if you have questions, you can type them in the chat. And when Shirley stops for a breath or a pause, I will stop her and ask a question and let her know who is asking the question. So if you can go ahead, Dr. Shirley, go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you.
Hey, it's so sweet to be here, and in talking with you, Christina, beforehand, as I told her, I have a deep fondness in my heart for the Atlantic Institute, and I will do almost anything for you all. So it is really delightful to be here with you all today. I've been teaching in the college university level since 1992. I am a social work professor, but I also teach some general ed courses, and my main role as a college professor and instructor is to help people find their way. And if it's in social work, that's awesome. If it is to help them find their way into some other degree or major, or even outside of college, I'm happy to do that too, because college is not for everybody. And there are lots of very interesting and rightful ways to go about moving into adulthood that don't involve college. But I am in the college arena. So yeah, I think Christina beat me to the punch already with the introductions. I'm curious if you could share in the chat or even to speak up, how many of you have plans for college? Does anybody care to share that? And I'll give you just a second to either put something in the chat or speak up.
All right, so this is when you can unmute yourself if you like. Oh, Ahmed is still unsure. Good to know. And Ahmed, it is entirely good to still be unsure.
Absolutely.
And Melinda said her son will be a freshman in high school with plans for college.
Awesome.
All right. All right. Laura said, how can I write IB essay for being chosen for UWC? So she's got plans apparently for college. And Kay said, refresher for me.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. And getting back to Ahmed's being unsure, I just want to say that I am most excited when students come into college saying they're not really sure what they want to major in, because that means you're open to all kinds of ideas, and you might actually find things that you weren't even aware were there. And
Yep.
and usually when somebody comes into college saying, I'm absolutely certain I want to be an English teacher, after the first year of courses, they decide maybe that's not for them, and they have gotten some other exposure to things through the general education program, and all of a sudden it looks like there's other possibilities for them, right?
Yeah, I will say my daughter is at the technical college and she went because she wants to be a baker.
Yeah.
And now that she's doing her baking classes, she's like, I think I'm gonna go back. I want to just be a prep cook.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to bake now.
Yeah.
I was like, see, it's kind of important to go and kind of explore.
Yeah. Which gets to what I think is so important, is that we allow ourselves to make decisions with contingent plans. That maybe I'll see what this is like, and maybe there will be something else that comes along that looks even better to me. So it's great to have ideas about where we want to go, as long as we leave ourselves open to whatever interesting things gets put into our life. So one of the things that Christine asked me to address is how to write an essay. I don't know if this addresses the IB question that somebody had. And if you would like, I can look into more information about that and send it to you through Christine afterwards. I'll share this PowerPoint with Christine and she can disseminate it to whoever wants to look at it afterwards as well. I'm sharing you the sources of where I'm getting this information from, because citations are really important in writing, and letting people know where you're getting your information from when you write an essay is also critically important. So I'm demonstrating that for you. So usually when you get a prompt for an essay, you're being asked a question. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So is anybody working with a prompt right now that you're trying to develop an essay for?
And if you're working with a prompt you're trying to develop an essay for, you can stick it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and share. Okay. So Kay said no.
Okay. So whatever the question is, you want to first really understand what that question is, because if you get that piece wrong, you're going to be answering something that's not asked of you. So you want to directly address it. So it's really important to understand that question first. And usually essay questions, I'm going to move my thing here. Okay. Essay questions can have 3 components to them. One is you can look at them and say, what are the key concepts that are being asked in this question? Because that'll give you a clue as to what the content is, what you need to be talking about. There's also going to be limiting terms, things that will kind of narrow what you're supposed to stay inside of rather than venturing off into different directions. And then there's going to be directive terms that are going to ask you to do something specific with that information. And they might ask you to analyze something. They might ask you to discuss something. They might ask you to define something, compare something, or evaluate something. So that's another really important piece to pay attention to in that question, because each of those things are slightly different, right? So I want to take a look at so you might get a question that looks something like this. Discuss the importance of light in Gothic architecture, right? So what are the key terms here? And you can put them in the chat. What are the key terms that you're looking at?
All right. Oh, Sam said discuss.
Discuss, absolutely. That's the directive, right? So you already know that's what you're going to be doing in your essay. What about the limiting terms or the key terms?
Oh, Onyx said importance.
Importance.
Important. Yes. Ahmed said importance of light.
Yes. Yes. Very good. So you're not talking about other things in Gothic architecture. You're talking about the importance of light. And any other key terms? What's the
Gothic architecture?
Gothic architecture, that's correct.
Ahmed.
Yes. So you're going to be focusing on Gothic architecture. You're limiting it to how light is important in there, and the directive is to discuss that. So that gives you already some structure to your essay, okay? So step 2 is you want to kind of define your argument. So you're going to kind of consider what your argument is going to be. So you need to take an informed position or point of view on the topic, and then defining and presenting a specific argument. So you want to shape a particular point you want to make in this step, right? So for instance, you could consider the architectural use of light in Gothic cathedrals physically embodied the significance of light in medieval theology, which is one sort of slant on an answer to that question. Or you could say In the Gothic Cathedral of Cologne, you're going to pick a specific cathedral. Light served to accentuate the authority and ritual centrality of the priest. So you're picking a specific cathedral, and what does light signify in that particular instance? That makes sense? I always try to find out if my audience is following me or if I've just left out some important pieces of logic.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And then you want to use evidence and reasoning and scholarship. You want to convince your audience of your argument and that you know what you're talking about. So we're going to look a little bit about how we do that. So evidence provides concrete information to support your claim. It usually consists of specific examples, quotes, statistics, and illustrations. And so you're going to be looking to the research for this or evidence in scholarly work to help you support your idea here. So you might be using, again, quotes from somebody who's very well known in the world of Gothic architecture. You might be using statistics from some piece of research that talks about how light is used in different ways, and maybe some illustrations. So like the question that specifically talks about the cathedral in Cologne, you could use an illustration from that specific example. You're also going to want to pay attention to your reasoning, and that's something that connects your evidence to your argument. So you're not going to be listing things out in a bullet point list here. You need to evaluate it and show it that it supports your argument. So this is kind of where some of your discussion comes in, right? So you're going to identify a piece of evidence from those examples, quotes, etc., and you're going to use that to make a bridge to the point that you want to make. So that goes back to your specific argument. And then the scholarship piece is show how your argument relates to what has been written in the topic, where you're going to cite specific works. So you might cite a work from 1940, for instance, that talks about Gothic architecture, and one of the elements that citation, that piece of scholarship uses is light. And that also, the scholarship can be used as a part of the pieces right above your evidence and your reasoning. So these three things are sort of linked in together. You want to organize a coherent essay. So what does that look like? Well, it has three basic components: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. And this may all be review for some of you, so I'm just going to put it out there for people for whom this is new. You're going to present the information in a specific order. You're going to have a general statement about the topic that provides context for your argument. So it's like an introduction, a thesis statement showing your argument, and you can use a very specific lead in there that says this essay argues that, etc. And then there's a roadmap of the essay telling the reader how the essay is going to present and develop your argument. And that the introduction piece shapes or sets sort of the context for the rest of your writing here. The body is you want to develop and elaborate on your argument. And again, you're going to use a reasoned case supported by evidence from that scholarship that you talked about. And it should be written in paragraphs. And each paragraph you want to use to support a main idea of your argument. So let's say that scholarship that you used, that you cited from 1948, identifies several different elements of light as it's used in Gothic architecture. And you might take a paragraph to look at each one of those elements. And it's also important to look up the structure of paragraphs, but I didn't want to get too in the weeds here. So I'm just saying that would be an important piece to know if you don't already know how to structure a paragraph. But the body of your essay really is built there to elaborate on the main ideas that support your theses. And the conclusion is that you want no new material in your conclusion. Your evidence and argumentation should have already been made clear in the body of your essay, but you want to use this place in your essay to restate the main position. So either you've decided you want to use that, for example, the theses about the cathedral in Cologne, or you want to use the more general theses that came before that, you're going to state that and then provide a short summary of the themes that you've also discussed. You're not going to leave it there, though. You also want to move on to consider what is significant about your findings and their implications. So you're, in a sense, taking it a step further. You're asking, are there any other factors that need to be looked at, but those are outside of the scope of your essay? So you might say, for instance, there's differences in time periods with Gothic architecture and how light is used, but I'm not looking at that particularly, but it's an important thing for you, the reader, to think about. And then how your topic links to the wider context, which may in fact be the time frame or time period that Gothic architecture was used. It could be linked to political factors that influenced architecture and church or cathedral building at that point. You can kind of play with that to link to specific things that you see as being important, but outside the scope of this essay. And then think about writing clearly. And that's gained by looking carefully at your essay and doing revision and editing. And I think there's two important ways to do that. Always, if you can, have somebody read through your essay and give you feedback. Because I always say, I know in my mind what I think I'm saying, but when somebody else reads it, they can say, I don't know what you're saying there, right? And so I've got to go back and make that clearer so somebody else can understand what I think I'm saying. The other way is reading through your essay aloud to a friend or family member. And I always find it important to do this because you may be typing along and you're really on the fast train to getting this thing done. And as you read through it, you realize you left some words out, for instance, or you used improper tense of a word, or you were thinking faster than you were writing and you missed a piece in there. And so when you read it out loud to somebody, your ears hear it, as well as somebody else's ears hear it. And that gives you two feedback loops to sort of check your work, right? The writing, the clarity of your writing. And the more and different ways you can review your writing, the better off you'll be. So I always say there's different ways to process information. One is we can read them with our eyes. Two is we can recite them with our words out loud. And the third way is to teach it to somebody. And by the time you get to teaching it to somebody, you have a much better idea of what you're talking about than just reading it or just saying it. Because when you start to have to explain something to somebody, your brain has to process it at a whole different level than just when you're reading it for information or sharing it verbally. So the business about teaching somebody what you're trying to convey is really an important step in being certain about your information and being certain about what you're saying about it. And then cite your sources and your evidence. So I'm guessing that most of you in your word is escaping me now, application essays are being asked to use a certain sort of format, such as APA, American Psychological Association, or MLA. And that will take, again, kind of investigating what the details of each of those are like. Some of you may have already been using those formats in high school and middle school, which is great. I, in the college context, run into a lot of people who've never heard of either one of them in their writing experience. And so just know that at the college and university level, those sorts of expectations will be there, that you have some idea about what the format of your writing needs to be and how you cite different sources. And I can put some links in an email to Christina about either of those if you would like as well. Okay, before we go on to this, any questions about the writing piece?
All right, and we had two new students join us while you were just speaking too. So we just reviewed writing an essay. And for those of you that might have missed anything, this is recorded, so it'll be put on our YouTube channel, and you can always go back later and get it and play it back, just so you know. And so any questions? I just wanted to interject there. Sorry.
Okay.
I think it's very interesting, the different formats that they have for
Yes.
essays.
Yes.
And sometimes I think the name of the YouTube channel, it's Atlantic Institute SC, is the YouTube channel. But I think I always find it very interesting, the different formats that things are in. And sometimes I've always seen an essay topic, like you had, like, you know, the light in the Gothic architecture. And I used to think, who cares? What is it? What do we need to know? What, you know, but when you start to break it down, it's kind of like, oh, there is a lot of discussion that one could have on this.
Yeah.
And I think I appreciate it now, being older. When I went to Turkey in 2014, we had an Orthodox priest that went with us. I led an interfaith group, and he knew so much about the iconography that was on the walls that I just thought it's neat to look at. But when he like started to explain different things about it, I was like, wow, you know, that is so very interesting.
Yes.
You know, so on the surface you can go, oh, that's neat. But then when you like really dig into certain things, there's a lot of education behind it. And sometimes that the dynamic of the human mind just gets me sometimes, that we're all unique, and we can have different things that draw us.
Yes. Yes. And to understand that there's a whole world of academic study around iconography, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And
I
he
mean,
was
it was
probably sharing with you a little tiny amount of everything he knew, which
tiny
is
amounts of things.
all that's up.
And I was just like, wow, this is incredible stuff.
Yes.
So
yeah.
All right. So I just wanted to interject in there. Anybody had any thoughts or questions about writing an essay? Can you find those formats online for those of us that are older? Like,
Yes.
I know I need to write an essay for my doula work that I do, and I'm
Yes.
thinking I should probably look up a format now.
So
like,
if you can put into the chat the Purdue OWL.
Okay. Hold on. Stop. You may type in
Purdue
Purdue, PERDUEWL.
Yes.
Okay.
That is pretty much recognized as a very authoritative site on how to specifically to write. And it goes into all kinds of different details about, are you writing an essay? Are you writing a formal letter? Are you writing a research paper? And it will give you very detailed information about how to do the writing, how to cite the writing. Let me just make sure I've got, if there's no other. It will also go into APA and MLA. Yes. owl.purdue.edu.
owl.purdue.edu. And I think it's important sometimes to you have to pull out of the topic or the things that you're thinking about the subject. What you really have to do is get the formatting correct.
Yeah.
That's where we make the difference.
I wonder if you could pull that up and share it with us, because there's some things in there I think that might be helpful for people to see.
I can, but I need to
stop sharing.
Share. Yeah, I need to share my screen. So I'm gonna pull up Purdue, owl.purdue.edu.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna pull it up, right? I'm just gonna stop. Let's see. PERDUE, right?
PURDE.
Wait, my volume went down. Say that again. P
as in Paul. DUE.
Right.
.edu.
Okay. So that looked like that. Hmm.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah. So what if I go
What
to,
if you go down to the questions that were there? It says, did you mean?
right? Hold on. Oh, oh,
Okay, awesome.
that might
So,
be it.
so what you see there is you've got both an APA guide and an MLA guide that will
Right.
take you into either of those. It's got an important piece on avoiding plagiarism, and that will give you some really helpful information. Let's see, there's an online writing lab that you can access. You might want to click on that so they can see a little bit about that. So it has writing resources and instructional material all on writing issues. And if you look on the side here, I'm going to scroll up a bit. So it's got general writing. You can click on any one of those to
Oh,
show what
general
yeah,
writing.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. Writing styles, writing APA style, APA 6th edition, Chicago style. Yeah, that's the research and citation piece.
Avoiding plagiarism.
Mhm.
So I'm curious how Chat GPT starts to play a role in some of this now.
So that's a really, really important conversation happening in education.
Right.
Um, and
And we don't have to sideline to it because I know there's like a whole lot there
yeah,
unless you have a quick.
yeah, and and uh, and so you can put almost any question into some of those apps and have it develop really a very convincing
Right.
answer to questions. And how to talk about this.
It's a lot. It's a lot right now. It's been a big thing. We actually have our art and our creativity contest
Yeah.
that we do, and we decided we're no longer going to do the essay portion of it
Yeah.
because that's going to be very hard.
Yeah. One of the things I know that I can do in my classroom, in a face-to-face classroom, is I can give a prompt and have them handwrite it out
Right. Right.
without any devices. I mean, that because I want to know how people think. And when you have your answer developed for you by an app, it's literally letting you not have to do the thinking.
Right.
And when you go to college, I feel like what you want to do is learn how to think and learn how to evaluate things. And if
Right.
you leave college having somebody else done all of that for you, you have spent a lot of money and gotten nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know people use it. I know people are pressed for time. I know people have lots of demands on their time. I teach a lot of people who are adult learners who have small children, and they're taking care of parents and grandparents all at the same time. And I know people are pressed from all directions, but literally there's no other place in life like college that I know of that really focuses on how do you think about things and how do you convey that thinking and how do you develop critical thinking, which if you have another source doing all of that for you, you're not going to be able to do it on the job. You're not going to be able to do it off the cuff.
Right. Yes. Yes. Because what matters is when you land a job and you go to it, they're expecting this performance and
Yeah.
you can't deliver.
Yes. The
Right.
same thing is true in my work as a social worker. So I do teach in higher education, but I'm also a mental health therapist. And I always say, there's going to be no drop down screen behind your client that gives you option A, B, and C to say when your client says X, Y, or Z.
Mhm.
So this isn't like a recipe, right? You have to know you have to have the framework in your head about how you respond to people and what you're going to do. You don't know what specific situations are going to come up.
Right.
And so you learning to do that as quickly and professionally as you can is going to be important. You're not going to have time to put it into one of those apps, right? And
Absolutely not.
in the end, it isn't going to be where you went to college or where you got your degree from that's going to keep you employed. It's going to be, what are your skills?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what's going to sell your work, and that's what's going to sell you, enable you to develop a career. Is kind of where I come from for that.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. I agree.
And I can tell in the classroom who's doing the work and who's not, because I'll ask a critical thinking question, and some people can do it, and some people look like deer in the headlights. And yeah.
Kay said, thank you so much for supporting critical thinking. I find there's a huge lack in critical thinking
Oh
nowadays.
my gosh. It is, I think it's one of, it's, first of all, it's a critical foundation piece for democracy. Because nobody's going to do your thinking for you. And to be an active participant in your own governance, it requires that you be able to connect dots. And critical thinking is about connecting dots. It's about doing analysis, and it's about doing evaluation, and it's about asking critical questions. And when you use SNAP, you're asking somebody else to do all that for you.
Oh, I have a friend that is a teacher in middle school in Florida, and she was posting last night on her Facebook that she spent the last hour correcting ChatGPT because she'd ask it math questions. She'd ask it some complex questions, and it would give a wrong answer actually, and she would correct it and say, "Oh yes, you're right," and it would give the reasoning why she was right. So I thought that was stellar.
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead. I'll let you continue the rest. I think we're good.
Okay.
Welcome to those of you that have joined us. We just discussed essays and how to write an essay. You're welcome to go to the YouTube channel later on and watch the recording again and learn about the essay portion. And now we are going to discuss what's next on the slide.
Well, can I just expand on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
So I write the curriculum for my own programs, my social work programs, and so much of what is embedded into the curriculum of my program is, how do you think about X, Y, and Z and why, right? So most of us come into early adulthood, or some of us stay in this place through adulthood by saying, I think this, and then you ask why, and they say, well, because that's what I learned in this, right? And the difference between that and critical thinking is, you've evaluated many other options. You've begun to think about what's the reasoning behind those options, and hold it up against science if need be. And science isn't perfect, but it certainly it is a way of vetting information that has to then be replicated, but it is at least has a method to it. And knowing why we think what we think is it's just essential to how we conduct ourselves in life. Maybe the story about the ham. So there was this holiday gathering, and there were 4 generations at this holiday, and the daughter says to the mother, how come you cut the ends off the ham before you put it in the oven? And she says, well, I don't know, your grandmother always did that. And so they go to the grandmother and they say, why did you cut the ends off the ham before you put it in the oven? And she says, I don't know, your great grandmother did that. And so they go to great grandma, and she says, because my pan was too small and I couldn't get the ham in it, right? Well, that is funny around a Christmas ham or a holiday ham, but it is a different thing when you're talking about ways of thinking about things, where somebody just made a decision to think about, or that was what they got to because that's what their experience told them, and that's then drifted down from generation to generation, and you in the end at this generation have no idea why you're thinking that. So
Yep, exactly. It's always good to ask.
right.
I know. Yeah, very true.
My goodness, there's 42 things in the chat. What is that all about?
I need to put a link in here for the YouTube channel, so I will do that in a moment. And then a couple of them are for me from putting the Purdue link in. All right. So go ahead if you want to share your screen again.
Oh,
We can go on
okay.
to the next.
Okay. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about study skills. And what I find, at least in the population I work with in higher education, is that there's been very little development of study skills in K through 12. And it is, if there's anything, it's about memorization. And memorization, again, does not lead to very many critical thinking skills. So the first thing is effective reading. And what I tell my own students is when you are sitting down to read something, do a quick scan of that piece of material so you can see what are the headings in this piece of writing. Are there subheadings to it? Are there any terms and definitions in here that I can take notes on so that when I am reading through it for real, I don't get stumbled up by those? And then I also ask them to take notes on them and the reading under those headings. So you might have a column that says major ideas, sub-ideas, and then terms and definitions. And that may take a couple pages to do that, but it saves you a lot of time on the back end of studying. So after you've written those things in your notes, you can begin to fill in more details. So you can go back to your headings and subheadings with more details about what's underneath those, because usually they expand on things or there's more detailed information that can go off in different directions. So the idea of taking notes is absolutely a part of effective study skills. Sitting and looking at a reading or just reading something a couple times, again, is only one way that your brain is processing that information. So when you read it and you go through it, that first part with terms and definitions and headings, you're processing it at one level. When you take notes on those headings, you're doing it at a second level. And when you fill in the details, you're doing it again at a third level. And the act of writing it out is a different way than just reading it. Again, your brain has to process it in a different way. I am also convinced there's a difference between typing it up on a Word doc and writing it out on a piece of paper, but that is a whole different discussion that I don't want to get into. Doing either way is better than not doing it all. So you can choose different styles of writing to do your notes. You can have subheadings, as I just mentioned above. You can also use bullet points if that's how your brain processes information. I'm also at the end going to share with you a format of taking something called interactive notes that I have all of my students do. They hate me in the first semester for having them do it. And by the time they graduate at the end, they're grateful that they've done it. And when they go to graduate school, they're even more grateful that they've done it. So I will share that with you too. Keeping organized, using an outline for your notes. When you know where point A, B, and C are in those notes, you know where you have to go back to review specific material rather than having to spend lots of time looking for that. So you may have an outline at the beginning of your notes for a particular reading or chapter that then helps you find where in your notes you're going to see this, okay? And as the interactive note example is going to show you, or the outline, is that it's more than just talking about what the text talks about.
Shirley, I think you have to share your screen again. Are you going off your PowerPoint?
Yes.
I think.
Am I not sharing?
Yeah, no, not now. I think you need to share your screen again.
So
I just was realizing, I was like, wait a second. She's saying something.
So
I think it's okay.
Oh goodness, here I am babbling along. And show. So I want to go to, oh, how did I lose you?
In the Zoom, because I went and I shared my screen, I think, and it kicked you out of sharing your screen.
Oh my goodness, I feel so stupid. Okay, share screen. I'm going to go back to those so I don't. Okay.
All right. And now I can see the Zoom page.
Okay.
That says introducing our all new Zoom whiteboard.
Where did my, there we go. Yes?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. So I started at study skills and zipped through things without having any Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, you're just gonna have to live with that stuff on the side.
Yeah, we're fine.
So again, and I've told you where this comes from, so you can look it up as well. But you start with getting that overview of the reading. You have headings and subheadings, terms and definitions. You take notes on those ideas, and then after you've written them out, you can fill in details. Okay. I like whoever's cat emoji that is. And you can use different styles. You can do paragraph form of note writing, or you can use bullet points. Keeping organized is really important. So knowing where your different parts of your notes are for a reading so that you can go to those things without having much trouble getting to them, because you want to review material. And time management, isn't that an interesting thing? Studying takes time, and there's no way around that. And so the better you're able to manage it, the more you'll be able to do productive studying. So setting aside a specific amount of time each day where you can do that. Just like your classes in college are going to be at specific times, you want to build into your schedule, I'm going to study for this subject for an hour between 4 and 5 o'clock every day at 5 o'clock. That way, it's like you have a time commitment to that particular area of studying. And then keeping your environment clear, quiet, and reducing clutter in your study environment, reducing interruptions, and then sticking to your schedule. So the note taking is one piece of that. I'm going to share with you the assignment that I give all of my students in college, and those are something I call interactive notes. So there's two sections to this. A, B, and C are the first section, and they're what I call the more objective part of your note taking. D, E, and F are more subjective parts of your note taking. So in A, you're going to do the defining of key terms and definitions. Oftentimes in textbooks, there's at the end of every chapter, there is a section of key terms and definitions, and you don't have to create them. You can just go there to find them, and you can write them out in your notes. Then the second part is writing an outline of that material. So you will write, section 1 with A, B, and 1, 2, and 3 underneath them, so that you can kind of keep your organization similar to that of the book itself. And then in C, identify significant ideas in that material. So this takes broadening out a little bit with a wide angle lens to say, okay, what are the big themes here? What are the major ideas that we're working with in this chapter? So I teach a course that includes the lifespan development. So there may be things that we're studying in conception, pregnancy, and birth, and there may be some major themes in there, like sequential development, or the order of development of the human being, that are kind of major themes. So identifying those things. And then in the subjective part of it, it gets into your thoughts and your interaction with this material. So what are some of the things you've thought about as you've read this chapter? What kinds of things has it made you think about? And did you have any strong reactions to things that you read in the material? And E is, how does this material connect to other learning you've done in other classes or other parts of your education? So it might be that you're reading something in psychology that talks a little bit about brain development, and you say, I touched on this in biology. This is familiar to me because I did this in the sciences, right? So that what we know about scaffolding of learning is that the more we can connect what we're learning to things we already know, the stronger that new learning is going to be. And then I ask them to put in some questions they'd like to discuss with the class or instructor that come out of your readings and your notes. So there may be something in the notes of the reading that you say, I really want to know more about this. Where can I find out about that? Or, hello. Or this made me think about this over here. So if it's back to that chapter on conception, pregnancy, and birth, and you think about what happens when you have a lot of stress during that period of development, what kinds of things does that do to the development of the pregnancy and the fetus, right? So you're starting to do more critical thinking there by connecting dots and asking questions. And then what I do in the classroom is I use some of that time to go back to students' notes and we talk about the questions they have from the readings. But you don't have to have this given to you as an assignment by your instructor or your teacher. You can do this all by yourself. It really is something that can be helpful to you outside of what you're being asked to do. You will probably do far better than your peers if you're using this format.
One question for you. When you have your students do the interactive notes, are they typing or are they having them write?
So we've had to go to online because I've had to go much to online teaching.
Right. Okay.
Again, I think when you do it handwritten, it's a different way of learning and your brain processes it a different way, but I'll take typing if that's what people can do.
I gotcha. Yeah.
It also means I'm not losing people's notes on the way, and it's all in a PowerPoint portal.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And some people are very detailed in this assignment. I can have students hand in a 12-page set of notes on a chapter. And there are people who hand in 3 pages of notes, and I know who's getting more depth there. And so it really is driven by your desire to learn.
Okay, so Muthana, I think I said that correctly. Muthana was asking, how do you organize notes? I mean, in a writing piece, how to establish connections and communicate these connections to yourself. Do you suggest regrouping in a table form? Is there a useful app that you recommend? Thanks. Now, Muthana joined us after the essay portion and after the Purdue portion.
So one thing I can add to what I've already said is sometimes it's useful to use some diagrams, like a Venn diagram, where you start identifying different ideas in different sections of your reading, and then you can begin drawing connections between those ideas. Some people are visual learners like that, so it helps them to use those sorts of devices to do that. Some people are verbal and audio processors, so it's helpful for them to talk through the material with somebody or a peer, right? So knowing also how you learn, what is your brain's most comfortable way to manage material will be helpful to you as well. Some people find it important just to start writing about what they've learned, and they begin making connections that way. Is that helpful?
Yes, I think so. I understand, because I understand how that works.
Yeah.
Personally for me. So sometimes I think for me, when I'm starting into something, I don't know how to organize it yet, but I like how you were saying, skim through.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I remember when I was in school, I would take notes on things and then it would end up scattered some and then together at the end, because now I finally figured out how I wanted to organize my thoughts.
Yes. But if you do that initial skim through where you're looking for the major headings, I have textbooks that actually start the chapter with the outline in the first page. And I tell my students, there's no reason to not do it. If you've got that, you can't tell me you can't understand it, because it's right there. You just need to type it out or write it out.
Right, which is probably why some books or some will have like 3 questions that this chapter will address.
Yeah.
Which then that helps you organize your thinking and your notes for what it is you're looking for and what it is you need to write down and take notes on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So sometimes it's the book writer that gives you the leg up.
Yes. Yes. And they're helping you out right away with that, right?
Right. Absolutely. If they're kind, gentle subject teacher on a subject, they will create it so that your brain will take it in better.
Yes. Especially if they're trauma informed.
I can actually see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I just, as a side note, I do a lot of work in trauma education, and I'm a trauma therapist, so I think about most of the world through that lens, and so pardon my getting off track there.
No, but I will say I think sometimes that can be a tough lens, because trauma can be everywhere and everything, and so many things can cause and create trauma for people that you wouldn't even know created trauma for somebody.
Which is
So,
also important why we think about just trauma, but resilience as kind of, they dance with each other, right?
right, right. Yeah. Okay, anybody have any questions during this pause that we have? Kay said, very helpful, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And Muthana said, it is, thank you, because you said if that was given your recap that you gave. You said it is, thank you. And Muthana, if you could put in the chat, you joined us a little bit later, where you joined us from, that would be great. And the same for Bing Keeley. If you could let us know where you joined us from, and Antonio, that'd be great too. Just so that we kind of try to keep track of where everybody's from. Oh, Muthana from Birmingham, England. Okay, that helps us also know our audience and who we're talking to. And I do believe many are very interested in coming to the States for education. Yeah. I've always remember that there's coming over this way from education is something that is very ideal that some seek out. Oh, yeah. Antonio's from Bishopville, South Carolina.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, we have one person local from South Carolina here with us.
Right.
Okay.
I can say I've been.
Okay, and then you have another section in your slide too, correct?
No, that was where
that was it. That was it. So I do like these interactive notes, and I get like it can be a lot when you're first starting, but when your brain starts, some of this I do get is training your brain.
Yes. Yes.
And like you were saying, K through 12, they try to teach you to memorize things, and there's not study skills.
Right. My my visual metaphor for that is there's a huge piece of education that operates this way. Student comes in, they sit down, you open the brain and you pour knowledge in, right? Whereas how I think about education is the student comes in and we find out what the student knows, because that's where we're going to start connecting things to, because you as a student come in with a wealth of knowledge already. And it's important that we begin connecting what we're learning to what you already know, because that's what makes it stick. That's that scaffolding piece.
That makes it stick, right? It gives you that ability to, when somebody asks you a critical thinking question, to give them an immediate answer without giving them a pat kind of answer.
Yeah. So I'm not strong in the hard sciences. So if I went into a chemistry 2 course, I would be completely lost, because I don't have the scaffolding underneath that.
Right.
To do that, right? I could go back and get that, but I don't have it currently. Whereas if I'm in a social science setting and I know a lot about psychology and sociology and political science and kinds of things, I've got things I can already work with.
Right. Well, that's how your brain is wired.
That is how it's
wired for that.
Yeah.
Whereas I do like Atlantic Institute, and so I do dialogue and bringing people together, and I also do when I fostered teen girls for a while, it was like figuring out the pieces of the puzzle, and being a birth doula that I do on the side, it's kind of like also helping connect things together in our brain, and helping to, and all of them tend to be caring types of environments. So it kind of feeds my caring of individuals and groups. Yeah. The caring for teens as well as caring for those that are older and younger, and so it all stimulates my senses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The biggest gift that life can give you is work that you love.
Absolutely, yes.
And to be able to, I feel like it's such a privilege to be able to get up every morning and work and think about, I love doing what I do. And so my mother had an 8th grade education, and she worked in a meat packing plant for many years, she was in a freezer much of the time, putting meat in frozen places, and her hands became so swollen from the cold. And I know, did not like her work, but she did it because she had to have a job.
Right.
And And if you as a human being have the gift of being able to find what you love to do, my goodness, there's barely anything better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree, because I've been doing what I love for the past 10 years, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like work.
Working in a cookie factory for one summer was what it took to convince me I was going to go back to college.
And for some of you that are on here that are younger, I just want to let you know that sometimes you if you don't know exactly what it is you want to do, that does not mean that you have to go to college at 18, right? Graduate high school and then go straight to college. I think I was probably 24 or 25 when I thought, oh, if I were to go to college, I would go for this now,
Yeah.
because now I know what I really like, what my passion is about.
Yeah.
You know, it would be in the social services realm,
Yeah.
because that's where I feel most at use. If I would have gone to college when I was 18, what I liked at the time was architecture and marine biology. And I'm going, oh, no, I don't want to do that. When I
Right.
learned architecture was like an 8 to 12-year learning experience, I was like, no. And then marine biology had to do with a lot of diving, and then I'm not a I don't equalize my ears well. It's like, no, I don't want to do that either. I just think some of those animals are really cool, you know. But it wasn't until my mid-20s that I really got that I liked the social services. We have a professor that works with us a lot over at Furman on some of our programs, and he's in the philosophy department, and it's Dr. Aaron Simmons. And listening to him, and I'm like, oh man, if I could take a class in college, if I take philosophy,
Yeah.
you know, I'm like, some of the stuff that, you know, I'm certain some of the social services classes like that you've taken, I would just love to sit and listen
Yeah.
and
Yes.
pull from,
Yeah.
because it just feeds you, you know.
Yes.
So when you find what feeds you, you go with it.
Yeah. 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 And it's impossible to know what that all is when you're young.
Right. And some of us can pick really well,
Yep.
and we can do really good. But sometimes the life skills stuff that we talk about here is not for your education. It's for you to be a well-rounded individual.
Yes.
You know, like the stuff that we've gone over, the how to cook something and how to do laundry. Like coming up next month is how to do some basic car maintenance. It's because those are the things that matter in our day-to-day life, makes day-to-day life easier.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I will tell you, if you don't know, learning how to study will make your day-to-day life easier, because like my boyfriend last year decided to become a firefighter, and he had, his book was literally like this thick, and he had to sit and study and balance doing all of his classes and study with work.
Mhm.
You know, so learning what you need to carve out that time and sit and give yourself that discipline really matters. And learning, you know, so, and writing really does matter. Like learning how to do, like, say I have to, in order for my doula certification to finish up, and I've been doing this for 8 years, and I just decided this last year I should go ahead and get the certification in it. You know, I have to write an essay. Well, I haven't written an essay since I was 16, 17. I haven't done that.
Yeah.
I don't even know all these styles you're talking about, but I'm going,
Yeah.
oh, this is very good
Yeah.
for me, because I'm just figuring I'm going to write my notes down, my feelings down on stuff. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, I have to write an essay. So it gives you a sense of professionalism when you can write something well.
Yeah. It sure does. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So any thoughts or questions for Dr. Huesman before we are finished? Thank you very much, because it is like 12:07. We've been on here for about an hour. But I would like to let you guys, if you have a second and you would like to unmute yourself, you can. Or if you have a question. Okay, so these programs are fantastic. I'm so glad you have put them together. They benefit so many people. Thank you both. So thank you, Kay. I appreciate that. One thing to always remember, that they all are on our YouTube channel, so you can email them to your school systems if you wanted to, and say, hey, you know, this is a life skills, this is like in 1 hour, and they can feel free to show these programs to students in the school systems, and they are completely unedited, so you get me saying all this right now. And then I think you said you would send me the slide,
PowerPoint. Mhm.
the PowerPoint, right? so that I'll send it to everybody that has RSVP'd and been on here. And any other thoughts or questions? Melinda said, thank you. This was very helpful.
Oh, you're welcome.
And Melinda, I know you are helping your daughter, so I'm sure some of this is a great refresher because this is not something that you are close to on a daily basis, with having to have a mind in work and then helping your child in school. I'm sure this is helpful to help refresh you. I think, like you said before, it was a refresher. So anybody would like to unmute yourself, you can. All right, and say thank you to our speaker. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking your time out from your trip in North Carolina. You feel free, anybody that would like to say thank you in person, you can. With Anna said, thank you very much, both of you. All right, well
Very
then,
shy people today.
I know, it's tough to get us, some of the younger crowds to
Yeah.
say thank you
That's
in
okay.
person. All right,
Okay.
Antonio said, thank you. This is very informative and helpful. You're welcome, Antonio. And you're welcome, Onyx, and you're welcome, Mithana, and you're welcome, Melinda, and Ahmed, and Sim, and Kay. So we thank you guys.
Been delightful to be with you all today.
Yes, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.